Khodynka Tragedy was a crowd crush that occurred on 30 May 1896, on Khodynka Field in Moscow, Russia. The crush happened during the festivities after the coronation of the last emperor of Russia. Nicholas II and his wife Alexandra were crowned Emperor and Empress of Russia on 26 May 1896. 4 days later, a banquet was going to be held for the people at Khodynka Field. In the area, a town square, theaters, 150 buffets for distribution of gifts, and 20 pubs were built for the celebrations. Near the celebration square was a field that had a ravine and many gullies. On the evening of 29 May, people who had heard rumors of coronation gifts began to gather in anticipation. The gifts which everybody was to receive were a bread roll, a piece of sausage, pretzels, gingerbread and a commemorative cup. Rumors spread among the people that there was not enough beer or pretzels for everybody, and that the enamel cups contained a gold coin. A police force of 1,800 men failed to maintain civil order, and a catastrophic crowd crush and resulting panic to flee the scene occurred. You might think that the sovereign ordered to organize this stampede, and if anyone is to be blamed for what happened, then the uncle of the emperor, the Moscow Governor-General Sergei Alexandrovich, who did not foresee the very possibility of such an influx of the public. At the same time, it should be noted that they did not hide what happened. All the newspapers wrote about Khodynka. The Russian emperor and empress the next day visited all the wounded in hospitals. I know that both Nicky and Alexei spent the whole of that day in visiting one hospital after another, wrote Grand Duchess Olga Alexandrovna. Nicholas allotted some 90,000 rubles to the victims' families out of his own personal funds, and not the state's. He ordered that 1,000 bottles of port and Madeira were to be sent to hospitals for the wounded, and attended the funeral service for the dead. Further, all orphans received a pension until they were of age. And they received it until 1917, until the politicians, who had been speculating on the Khodynka tragedy for years, made it so that any pensions in Russia ceased to be paid at all. The Tsar and his wife attended a ball that was held on the evening of the tragedy. The ball was hosted by the French ambassador Gustave Lannes de Montebello, 1838–1907, in Moscow. The French spared no expense in the extravagant preparations for the ball. The ball in part marked the recently signed Franco-Russian alliance, and the slander, repeated over the years, that the Tsar, despite the Khodynka tragedy, went to the ball and had fun there, sounds absolutely vile. The sovereign was indeed forced to go to an official reception at the French embassy, which he could not help attending for diplomatic reasons, an insult to the Allies. He paid his respects to the ambassador and left, having been there only 15 minutes. It was clear that the newly crowned emperor and empress did not want to attend the ball. According to the Countess Maria Eduardovna Kleinmichael, 1846–1931, in view of the terrible expense, the French ambassador begged the imperial couple to attend. He urged the emperor to agree to at least attending the reception, even if for a short while. The Tsar looked all haggard and pale as a white sheet. The imperial couple walked in silence through the halls, bowing to those who had assembled. Then they went into the ambassador's drawing room, and shortly thereafter departed. The French were in despair, but they seemed to have realized that their demands after such a tragedy, one which shook the emperor and empresses so deeply, were simply impossible. Grand Duchess Olga Alexandra also noted, "I know for a fact that neither of them wanted to go. It was done under great pressure from his advisors. Nicky's ministers insisted that he must go as a gesture of friendship to France." Count Sergei Witt, who served as prime minister under Nicholas II, recalled that Nicholas looked sick, and was obviously depressed. When asked if Nicholas II showed indifference to the victims of the Khodynka tragedy, Professor M.V. Lomonosov, who serves as associate professor of the history faculty of Moscow State University, said, "There was an official reception with the French ambassador, and it was necessary to demonstrate good relations with France. It was quite obvious that if Nicholas II for any reason ignored this event, then it would have a negative impact on Russian-French relations. As you know, his attendance at the ball was purely official." The reception was not an entertainment event as such. It was political. There are things which need to be done, despite the fact that a tragic event overshadowed it. By attending, Nicholas II fulfilled his duties and Russia received a certain European political resonance. And from this they created the myth of a heartless despot having fun while his subjects die. From here the absurd nickname, Bloody, created by the radicals and picked up by the educated public crawled. The Khodynka tragedy created a distorted picture of Nicholas's reign that lasted for many years. The image was unfair, notes Russian historian Dominik Levin. Not for the last time, however, the emperor's self-control exposed him in temperamental Russian eyes to accusations of heartlessness and indifference.